Welcome back to the CHIA training. We're in section 1, analytical foundations, and this is subsection 4, the last subsection, called competitive sets. Let's get started. Subsection 4, competitive sets. This is a traditional slide at STR called Benchmarking 101. And the subtitle there says My Hotel versus the Competition. And this is always interesting because, here's a hypothetical problem. You have two managers, manager A and manager B. And look at the bar graphs there, the orange graphs. You see manager A, and you see some year-over-year change measurement. Now, this could be occupancy, this could be ADR, this could be RevPAR. We'll define those terms in a minute. Doesn't matter what that is right now, but look at manager A. His or her performance is 7%. So 7% year over year, that means 7% better this year than last year. That's looking pretty good. Now, let's look at poor manager B. Manager B has -3%. So that means his or her performance this year is 3% worse than last year. If that's all you knew about manager A and manager B, who would get the bonus? Obviously, we give the bonus to manager A, and that's about the best we could do. But now let's talk about what STR brings to the hotel industry. And this is what we mean by benchmarking. When I hit the when I hit the button, we now look at the competitors of manager A and manager B and how their relative competitors did. Now look at manager A. Manager A's competitors did 15% better than last year. So now we're looking at manager A, and who was looking really good just a minute ago, we now see that he or she actually underperformed the competitors by 8 points. And manager B, who we were feeling sorry for just a minute ago, we now look at their competitors. Their competitors did -10%. So now we're looking at manager B, and we see he or she actually outperformed their competitors by 7 points. Totally different story. When you add the competitive data in for benchmarking, you now see the bonus goes to manager B. And the good news is that's basically how the companies in the hotel industry do that. And based upon STR data, that's what they do. And that's a great introduction to benchmarking. Now, benchmarking relied upon heavily in the hotel industry. It takes place at many different levels. It takes place at the property level, and that's sort of what we were focusing on. It also takes place at the chain level. If you work for one of these hotel companies, you could be a brand manager for Courtyard, and you would be comparing Courtyard to other chains in maybe your same scale or a group of chains. If you're a tourism organization, you could be comparing the data for your city to other similar cities, and you'd be benchmarking that way. So lots of benchmarking going on, not just in the hotel industry, but in every industry as well. But in the CHIA training, we're going to focus on benchmarking at the property level. And one of the keys to that is the competitive set. Also, you'll see we'll refer to that as the comp set. Now, competitive set is a group of hotels used primarily for comparison against a subject property. They share similar qualitative and quantitative features, which we'll talk more about in a minute, but they aid the sales and marketing departments. They're often included in management contracts as well. Now, in the old days, it was always fun to hear general managers that have been around for a long time talk about call arounds, and essentially they would get on the phone at night and call their friend at the hotel nearby and say, hey, what's your occupancy? And they would call all their friends to determine their occupancies and see how they did comparatively. And always hear stories that the GM would call their friend, and the friend would say, oh, we have 80% occupancy, and the person on the other line said, 80%, wow, I'm not even close to that, and be surprised. But then on the way home, they would drive by that hotel of their friends and see no cars in the parking lot, no lights on, and realize, hey, call arounds weren't a really good way to do that. So STR got involved in benchmarking back in the 1980s, working with the hotel companies very closely. Several foundations from the very beginning: confidentiality, accuracy, and the aggregation of data. We'll talk more about the aggregation when we get into methodologies. Let's talk a little bit about comp sets and some basics here. First of all, when. Comp sets can be created as soon as a hotel is under construction. And many times that happens because the hotel wants to begin learning about their competitors long before they open. That's called an under construction STAR report. Next question, who decides? And now if it's an independent hotel and I'm the owner, I get to decide totally by myself, but that's, normally we're talking a chain hotel. And in that case, the comp set decision is a joint effort, multiple stakeholders. There's going to be corporate people or maybe people at the regional office. A good GM is going to bring in their sales, director of sales and other people in the hotel. So we say it's a joint effort with multiple stakeholders. Here's a why question. Why don't I just choose a comp set that I can easily beat? And we get that question all the time. And it's a good question. We're going to come back to it in our hotel math section. The big question here is the definition of what you mean by beat. And I use that term loosely. It is complicated, and it's not just, it doesn't just mean a higher occupancy and a higher average daily rate. It involves relative improvements over time. So we'll see that, we'll come back to that question in the future for sure. And then one last question, what is the average number of hotels in a comp set? The average, if you look at all the competitive sets for hotels all over the world, they tend to be between 5 and 6. We'll talk more about rules in a minute and come back to that. Okay, key considerations when creating a comp set. When it comes to deciding upon a competitive set, we use a methodology called the 4 Ps, and we'll go through those in detail. When it comes to utilizing these 4 Ps, STR will provide a hotel or a company something called a radial participation list, and it has relevant fields to help in this process. We'll see a sample in our application. But here are the 4 Ps. First, participation. Now, makes sense. Hotels have to submit data in order for them to be relevant. If they don't submit data, it's silly to have them in their comp set. But submitting data is a little more involved than just yes or no, because a hotel can submit monthly data, it can submit daily data, and it can submit group and transient data. We'll see in that radial participation list, all 3 of those types of data will be indicated, and that'll be important. The next P, proximity. Now, common sense, you're going to be looking at hotels that are close to your hotel. So in that radial participation list, there will be a distance field, and when you get it, the hotels will be sorted in distance order, and you'll be looking at that. That'll factor into our considerations. Now, it's not the only consideration, but it is important. Next question, pricing. Normally, competitors will have similar prices. If I'm a Four Seasons and there's an economy hotel across the street, not even thinking about that for my comp set. So we're going to have hotels at similar price levels. And now think of it. We can't tell, when you're setting up a comp set, we can't tell you the price level, any ADR information about your competitors. That's obviously confidential. But what we can do is we can tell you the scale that they're in, and in the case of independent hotels, the class that they're in. So that gets you in the neighborhood, and that's good for a draft. And we'll talk about that and show you that in action. Keep in mind, though, that you can get pricing information on the internet, and you can go, people call that rate shopping, and you can go out to the internet, put in a date, compare rates of the competitors you're considering. A lot of people do that, and there are even companies that provide that service. Final P, product. Here's where we're talking about the features, the amenities, and the services. If you have a spa, you'd probably be looking at competitors that have spas as well. as well, so on and so on. If you have a lot of meeting space, you're going to be looking at hotels that have a lot of meeting space. If you have 500 rooms, you know, and there's a hotel across the street that has 50 rooms, probably not really a competitor. So those are examples of fields that we're using when it comes to product. Now, we'll go through an activity. The application actually applies these 4 Ps, and we'll show that and go through that. That is one we highly recommend. Here's just a quick review what we mean by STR participation. Remember, when we say participation, those are the hotels that submit their data to STR. We give you a few stats there. Now, this is a little US centric, but we can get that data for you any country of the world. In the US, 75% of the hotels participate with STR. In other words, they submit their performance data to STR. Total average, that is based upon number of rooms. Also in the US, 96% of all the branded chain hotels participate. Many independent hotels participate as well. Now, we want to get that data to you for any country that you're from, so please let us know if you need more information. Certain reports that STR generates will have columns that give counts of hotels and the corresponding rooms by census and sample. Census refers to the hotels that are in our database. That's a big database, close to 250,000 hotels. Sample refers to the hotels that participate, nearly 70,000 hotels. That's the difference, and that's optional. You won't need that for the exam. Here's a sample radial participation list for a sample hotel in Nashville, Tennessee. This is the Lowe's Vanderbilt Hotel. And you see from this, the first column is STR number, then the name of the hotel, the distance, and then their participation information. Do they submit daily data, monthly data, daily segmentation, monthly segmentation, and then lots of other fields. Now, this participation list has about 50 or 100 fields on it. I show you the first few, but there are many out to the right when you scroll over to the right, and we'll give you a sample of that to look at in just a minute. You do see number of rooms in the very far right-hand column for this sample radial participation list. A couple hints when it comes to creating comp sets. When it comes to the various Ps, the 4 Ps that we mentioned, different people will put different weights on these Ps. You know, some say, hey, proximity is more important, and then some say product is more important, and it's a personal preference there. The 4 Ps is a great way to get started. It's not the only answer. You're going to go, you know, many folks are going to go out and visit the hotels. They're going to look at the review data, and they're going to do a lot more than just the 4 Ps. But the 4 Ps are a good logical way to start the process. There's lots of external information, and I mentioned the idea of rate shopping earlier. Now let's talk about the rules related to creating comp sets. The first rule has to do with sufficiency. As of 2017, comp sets must consist of 4 or more hotels in addition to the subject. See, that's the minimum, 4. Now, prior to this, there was a number of 3 in North America and Asia Pacific, and that changed in 2017. Next rule, maximum. There is no rule related to the maximum number of hotels in a comp set. Remember, I said the average was between 5 and 6, but many have much more than that, and there are good reasons for doing that that we could explain and talk about. And also, there's no rule as far as where you go to get a hotel for your comp set. There are examples. Let's say if I have an island hotel, I may go, you know, to other islands, you know, that may be near or far away from my hotel. Next, percentage checks. Now, this is important because, and it goes back to the confidentiality. Let's review the rules. No single property or chain can account for more than 50% of the total rooms in a comp set. We'll demonstrate this in an example coming up. So that's basically a single property or a single chain can't have more than 50% of the total rooms that are in the comp set. We add them all together, you'll see in a minute. Next, no single company, now that could be a parent company or a management company, can account for more than 70% of the total rooms in a comp set. That number does go up a little higher. We call this the 50, 50, 70. So 50 for property, 50 for chain, 70 for company. And we'll demonstrate that in a minute. When these percentage checks are calculated, the rooms of the subject, as well as any hotels in the same chain or the same parent company as the subject, are excluded. So if for some reason, well, first of all, when we're doing that math, we take the subject rooms out and we just look at the rooms that are left when we do the math. I'll show that to you in a sample. Secondly, if there's a hotel in the same chain or parent company as the subject, we have to assume that the subject hotel, if they really wanted it, could get the data of the hotel in their same brand or same company. So we have to exclude that from the calculation when we do the percent checks. And we'll see that in the case scenario. Why the rules? The comp set rules and the percentage checks are in place to protect the confidentiality of the data. Now, that's the confidentiality of the data for a hotel, but also the confidentiality for the chain and the parent company. Obviously, that's critical for STR. We have hundreds of checks built in to ensure confidentiality. Now, here's an example, and the sample hotel is the Holiday Inn. That's a subject hotel with 180 rooms. If you notice in this comp set example that the Holiday Inn picks 6 other hotels as their competitors: a Hampton, a Comfort, a Holiday Inn Express, a Comfort, another Holiday Inn, and the Home 2 Suites. Now, if you add up all the rooms of the comp sets, you come up with 1,250. The first thing we do is remove the rooms of the subject hotel. So right there, we remove 180 rooms in the first step. Next, we have to remove the rooms of a hotel in the same chain. Notice there is a Holiday Inn in their comp set that they named. So we take those rooms out as well. One more thing. Notice there's a Holiday Inn Express, not the same chain, but the same parent company. So we take those rooms out of the mix and we're left with 750 rooms. Now we do percent checks of those 4 remaining hotels. First percent check, you see this in the columns on the right-hand side. We look at just the percentage of the rooms. And of course, we're dividing the number of rooms each of the hotel into the 750 total. Notice the percent by hotel is 29, 21, 27, and 23. Next step, we do it by chain. Now notice there were 2 Comfort Inns in our comp set. So we add those together and let's check the percentages of the percentages by chain. We have 29 and then 48 for the Comfort Inn. Now, good news is that's not above the 50, so we're still okay. And then we go to 23, we're still okay. Now, when we go to company, let's take a look. The Hampton Inn and the Home 2 Suites Inn are both Hilton parent company properties. So we add those 2 together and we get 52%. So now we have 52% Hilton, 48% the Comfort and the Comfort are both Choice parent companies. But the good news is, remember, that number is not 50, but 70. So this comp set actually passes the percent check rules, and this would be approved by STR. Good. 2 more quick things to share. First, changing comp sets. This happens periodically. Why? Comp set may need to be changed due to many reasons. It could be a renovation. It could be a new general manager that comes in and just looks at the comp set, feels like it could be improved. When it's possible to change your comp set at any time. A hotel can do that at any time. They can even do it multiple times. However, most people do tend to wait to the beginning of the year, so then they have a whole year of consistent data for the same comp set. There are rules involved when it comes to changing comp sets. They must be done by a net change of 2 or more properties to prevent isolation. And so that basically means I can't just add one hotel into my comp set. Why? Because then the hotel could take all the data from the prior month, compare it to all the data from the next month with a new property in their comp set, and they basically can do the math to isolate the data for the single hotel that they added in. So we say you have to make a net change of 2. You could add 2. Well, Emmett, you could also add 1 and drop 1, or you could drop 2 if there's enough in there. So a lot of different options, but that again is a confidentiality check. We're protecting against isolation. A little bit of expansion on that. If making a change with 2 properties, both must be in a different chain. Again, going back to the chain confidentiality, different from the subject. Now, the only exceptions to the change of 2 rule is you can add a new hotel within 6 months of it opening, or you can remove a new hotel that has closed or stopped participating, but you have to wait until 3 consecutive months. We just need to ensure that it's really closed or it's really stopped participating and it's not going to come back. One last thing, additional comp sets. Many hotels have more than just a single comp set, and there's 100 different reasons for this. Sometimes you may have a local comp set of properties that are nearby you, and then maybe a more regional comp set of hotels that are a little farther away, but maybe a little more like you. If you're a hotel with a water park, you may pick up other hotels, within your state or within, in a next city that have a water park as well. Sometimes if a hotel's between 2 cities, they may have 1 comp set for one city, 1 for another, or if they're between airport and downtown, again, they could have 2 different comp sets. Sometimes it's related to a special niche, like you're a boutique hotel. You may have a local comp set and then 1 of other boutiques that are farther away. Sometimes it's a focus on the data. You may feel weekday versus weekend. On the weekend, you may feel like you compete with a slightly different group of hotels. Group versus transient is another example of that. So a bunch of different examples. Sometimes people will keep an old comp set around when they make a change just to see sort of perspective, and other examples as well. The names, the first comp set is usually referred to as the primary, and then you have a secondary, third, and so on. And a lot of times that primary comp set is the one that's related to the general manager's bonus. And the rules there, again, same concept when it comes to rules. A second comp set must differ from the primary comp set by at least 2 properties. And the same rules apply as for the changes. Good, so that's it for the comp set subsection. There are quiz questions in there, as we said before. We're going to let you do those on your own, either online or with your instructor. And we're going to go through those real quick. But we will talk about the application exercises. This application exercise is highly recommended. Again, it's optional, but it does apply the 4P methodology. A spreadsheet is provided for this, and so we try to make it easy. If you're an instructor, we'll be glad to help you get that if you're teaching students at a university. But you can also request personalized data. If you want students to create comp sets for hotels that they're more familiar with near your university, we're more than glad to do that and help you do that. So typically in a workshop, we're going to break the class into groups and have them work together to do this. Now, when it comes to the application, we give 2 alternatives for this application. The first one is sort of a manual alternative. We provide a radio participation list for different hotels, just like we did for the Lowe's. And then we have the groups go through that. We have steps that they follow, identify the fields that help understand the 4 Ps, the ones that are related to the 4 Ps, compare the values of the potential competitors and go through that list. Let's take a look at this one though. It's the Excel alternative. Again, it starts with a radio participation list, and this is in Excel. It's provided in Excel, so this allows you to work with it in Excel. When you get the list, it's sorted by the distance field. You look at the hotels in your radio participation list, and you figure out which ones are the ones that are closest to your hotel. Now, depending upon which one you're working with, that could be a mile. If you're out in a rural area, it could be 10 miles. But what we want you to do is we want you to pick a best case and then a second best case. So maybe 20 hotels are going to be in the best case, and then maybe the next 20 hotels are going to be in the second best case. And when you're in Excel, what we have you do is we have you color the best case hotels in one shade, like a darker shade, dark green, and then color the second best set of hotels in a lighter shade of that same color, dark green, light green. You'll see this in a minute. So that's step 1 with the distance field. Then you're going to continue in that spreadsheet, and you're going to use a sort program to sort the participation by the other fields. For example, class is a very important field. It's going to give some indication of the price level of the hotels. So we sort it by class. Then you're going to go through the list and you're going to figure out which hotel is in the closest class, like your class, the same class as your subject, and you may highlight them in a different color. Let's say you pick red. Then you could pick a class that's close, maybe the one just lower or just higher than your class, and you pick a lighter shade of that same color, and then you highlight those. Again, we're picking best case, the same class as my subject, second best case, higher or just lower. You sort by the other fields, like the number of rooms. When you sort by number of rooms, you can then pick hotels that are very close to the number of rooms in your property, and then a little farther away. Now, when it comes to rooms, you do have to go up and down. So, but it's basically the same principle. Meeting space is another big one. If you have a fair amount of meeting space, you're looking at competitors that have a similar amount. Pick a different color, best case, second best case, and so on. When you're all done highlighting, and I'll show you a sample of this in a minute, you go back and resort the hotels back into distance order. That's the very first pass that you took. Now, here's an example of what we've done. Let's go through it. The distance, notice we use green as our distance color, and you'll see the first 20 or so hotels in a dark green, and the next 20, can't see all of them, are in a light green. For number of rooms, notice that was red. And look at our Lowe's hotel. It had, at the very top, you see it had 340 rooms. Hotels that had a similar number of rooms, we highlighted in dark red. We sorted, of course, that made it easy. And then we went a little higher, a little lower. We colored that in the light red. Now, the participation fields are important. That shows the X's. Obviously, we want to use those to be sure we pick hotels that have that do participate. You'll notice a couple lines down, the Homewood Suites, they haven't opened yet. So at this point, not a good idea to put them in our comp set. We have open date in there, just FYI. It does show us our hotels under construction. Look at the class fields. Notice our hotel is a luxury class. So what did we do? There were a couple luxury class hotels. We highlighted them in dark orange, but then we went to the class right below and highlighted them in light orange, upper upscale. So those are going to be our best and second best cases. And finally, for meeting space, our Lowe's hotel has 24,000. We use blue for this. The dark blue is closer to our 24,000. You see that as you look down the sample, and then the light blue is a little farther away. So we went through that activity, coloring the different fields. You don't have to do it this way. This is just an Excel alternative. Some people know how to use filters, and they could use the filters on that. That's another concept as well. But when you then, almost the last step, you resort it back into distance order. When you look down this list now you have a much better perspective of whether these hotels are good matches for your comp set. As you look down, the first one we like is the Hutton Hotel. Now I've done this and I've actually highlighted the ones that I like. The Hutton Hotel, notice it's real close, 247 rooms, luxury class, 13.6. That's a no-brainer. That's definitely a good potential. Look at the Marriott Nashville, similar rooms, upper upscale, a lot of meeting space. Now look below it at the Holiday Inn. Notice it, similar rooms, but it's upper mid-scale, much lower in class, not a good candidate. And we go down there and we see different ones. Now look at the Autograph Collection. It's upper upscale, it's got 12,000 rooms, it's just a mile away, but instead of 340, it has 125 rooms, much less. Why do I highlight that in yellow? Because I think, for my primary comp set, that's probably not a good match, but maybe I'm going to have another comp set that's focused on weekend business, weekend getaways. And in that case, maybe at that point, I do focus on the Autograph Collection. So I could consider that for a secondary comp set. You get the idea of what people think about, and I highlight a few others in this sample. You could do that. Your instructor could give you other hotels as well. Good application. I talked you through a little bit of it just to give you an idea of the process involved and the thought process. Remember, it's not the only decision. Once you come up with a list like that, then you're going to go out and explore those hotels a little bit more. You're going to look at those websites. You try to figure out who's the target audience, who are they trying to attract. You may go visit the hotel, a lot involved in that, but this is a good logical way to get at least a first draft. That's it for comp sets, and that is it for the first section on analytical foundations. And we'll be back, and we'll get started with hotel math fundamentals.